Good morning, this is Jack from Charging the Markets, and this is the pre-market webinar for the morning, pre-market crypto webinar for the morning of 15th of April. My disclaimer, I do this for educational purposes only. I'm here to share my technical analysis with you. I hope you can take some of what I'm doing and learn from it, transfer it to your own charts. I'm not here to issue trading signals. Right, I'm doing a series of posts this week. I did one on the US dollar yesterday. I'm doing one on bonds today. I'm doing one more generally on the US dollar and status of the US dollar as a reserve currency and the status of US treasuries within that reserve currency. One of the things I'm going to be saying is that we could see a major boost, a major decline in US treasuries, and that decline would have lots of beneficiaries. Other currencies, which are already reserve currencies, would be beneficiaries. Other assets, which are seen as decent stores of value, may well get a big boost too. One of those is crypto. And what I am wondering here is whether we might see cryptos have a big boost and see crypto generally potentially start another leg up while equities aren't doing that. Now, that would be unprecedented, and I'm always slightly hesitant about talking about things and suggesting things might happen when they are unprecedented. This has been pretty much joined at the hip with equities for a long time, on Bitcoin particularly. But in the event that starts to be a run on US treasuries, in effect, that US foreign holders basically start selling their US treasuries and getting out because they no longer see them as a safe haven. And we were seeing signs of that happening last week. One very, very obvious beneficiary would be crypto. And I'm wondering whether we might see another leg up start here. Let's have a talk about that. I've got a double bottom here. I've drawn that on the daily chart. I've talked about that having a target. Oh, sorry, that was on the hourly chart, actually. A target in the 101 to 104 area. Potentially, if we saw a serious spike from US Treasury start, then that could make that target and head up into new highs. And I'm wondering about that possibility. Although, historically, the evidence for that is obviously weak. So in terms of Solana, nice looking falling wedge. We have broken up from it. We are testing the 50 DMA. Haven't got through that with any conviction yet, but it's looking promising, and I'm liking the upside. This is a potential double bottom or part-formed IHS. We don't have any meaningful hourly divergence here at the moment. Nope, we don't. And at the moment, we're still tracking on the arrows I drew in my post last week when I was looking at this basically coming up, forming an IHS potentially, or maybe directly breaking up. And potentially getting back into the 200 area. I think crypto could be a big beneficiary if there is a flight from US treasuries. I think if we're looking at assets which are not exposed to countries' debt, which are not controlled by not particularly independent central banks, and are seen as a store of value, well, let's face it, crypto has been coming up in the ranks here, and this could actually be a significant breakout on crypto. I am wondering very seriously about that. I'll be talking about that mainly in my post tomorrow, but that's coming up. It doesn't necessarily need to happen, and there is no precedent for it, which is a concern. But if we do see, but there's no real precedent for a major flight from US treasuries either. I think if we see that, that's going to mean that a variety of stores of value around the world, currencies and other assets, are going to see sizable boosts as people leave treasuries and head off to different destinations. One of those really could and should be crypto, and that could start another significant leg up. And I think that flight from treasuries is looking increasingly likely. All right, looking at Ethereum. Ethereum, we've got an hourly chart here. We've got, again, the same arrows I've drawn in. We're not making as much progress, but we have broken over this declining resistance slightly, and that was a nice declining resistance trend line. I'm leaning towards this going up. I think the crypto of the main ones which I'd be thinking would benefit least would be Ethereum, but we've got a decent track here for a nice rally. And we may well see that. What I'd be skeptical about Ethereum getting back over, really, more than anything else, would be the 200 DMA. But the 200 DMA is up in the 2783 area. That's over 1,000 up from here. It's a long way to be worried about, and I'm not really concerned about it. So I'm somewhat skeptical about even it getting over declining resistance, but even that is a 2300. There's lots of room for a rally. I just think Bitcoin and Solana will likely rally more. and more sustainably. I think bigger picture issues mean that Ethereum, frankly, may not be around in 5 or 10 years. So we'll see. All right, great. In that case, I think that's a wrap. Not seeing any questions. My pleasure as always. Anyway, watch out for that bonds thing I'm doing today and the post I'm doing tomorrow. But I'll be talking about crypto in there and looking at basically stores of value. And I think that run on US Treasuries is looking increasingly likely, and that could be the best thing that ever happened to crypto. So I'll be talking about that tomorrow. It's highly speculative, but nonetheless, it's interesting. All right. Cheers, guys. Catch you tomorrow.